Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is Brandon Bias from CheckIt.com, and welcome to our first Workshop Wednesday. As most of you may know, yesterday was Christmas, that wonderful time of the year where people take the day off to spend time with their family, give each other presents, and eat a crap ton of food. Such a great holiday over here. But now that Christmas is behind us, we are well on our way to getting to the new year, 2013. So, since we're so close to the new year, I figured we might as well have a New Year's themed tutorial. And before we get into the tutorial itself, I have a really quick favor to ask of you guys. I really need you to like and comment on this video because lately Eli's been getting pretty upset that we haven't been getting a lot of views and all that, or not really views, but likes. And he's been locking me in the basement whenever we don't get that many likes. And I really don't like that because it's cold, it's dark, it's damp, and extremely lonely down in the basement. So please do me a favor, like the video and leave a comment so I can, talk to you guys and have a little bit of company. So yeah, I think you get the point now. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into our little tutorial here. So let's take a peek at what we're making. Voila, here we go. We've got our 2013 epic 3D text with some lens flares and some just depth of field and all these little particles going on. And there's just so much beauty going on here. It's amazing. I love it. And I don't really know what else there is to say other than this thing looks pretty awesome, but it's a lot of work. So let's strap in our little seat belts here and get going. I don't even know why I said that. It sounds kind of cheesy. So in order to create this particular effect exactly as it is, there is a lot of things that we need in order to accomplish it. The first thing, obviously, is Photoshop CS6 Extended, because we are creating this in 3D space. Now, if you want to use CS5 Extended, you can try, but I can almost guarantee that's going to look nothing like this. So, CS6 Extended only, alright? And the second thing we're going to need, obviously, is the font that we want to use for the text. Now, lucky for you guys, the font is free to download. It's called Credit Block and is created by Video Copilot. I'll leave a link for it in the description. And in order to install it to use in Photoshop, you just basically have to install it onto your computer. So to do that, you double-click the TTF file here, and you click Install. Pretty simple. If you're on a Mac, I really don't know the process for that, but you just install it on your computer, and it will automatically show up in Photoshop, okay? So, now that you've got the Photoshop out of the way, you've got the font completed in terms of download and install, the next thing you are going to want is some sort of texture to use for the ground plane. Now, the texture that I used happens to be from Video Copilot's Action Movie Essentials 2, but you can use whatever the heck you want for that. And let's see, there are a couple other things that we're going to need. For example, you're going to want to use Magic Bullet's Photo Looks, as well as Red Giant Software's Knoll Light Factory, or Knoll. I'm pretty sure it's just Knoll. Either way. So you need those two in order to create like the lens flares and the overall mood of the coloring here. And, those are just, little additions to really make everything pop. All right? So download those by whatever means that you want to use. I'm not going to make any suggestions or anything like that. And once you've got all that, we are set to go. So let's go ahead and make our new document and get going. I'm going to use a 1920 by 1080 document. Well, let's just name this 2013 just for kicks. We'll actually have a 2013, so we'll do a 2013 V2 just for the heck of it. And for the background contents, let's make those white and hit OK. And let's hit Control 0 to zoom into document size here. And let's hit the letter D on our keyboard to reset our foreground and background colors here. And I want to invert this background so it's black. So I'll hit Control I or Command I to invert that so that it's black. And let's just double click the background and rename it BG for black. Or sorry, not black, but for background. And let's go ahead and grab our text tool by hitting the letter T. And let's go ahead and click somewhere in the left-hand area over here. And so make sure you have the credit block font selected. The font size doesn't matter too much because we'll be tweaking that later anyway, but we will change our color to white and hit OK. And so let's go ahead and type in 2013, and then we'll hit the check mark to commit that. And then let's hit Control-T or Command-T for on a Mac to bring up the transform tool here. And then let's scale this up while holding the Shift key until we get it to a size that looks pretty decent here. And let's do something like that. That's looking pretty good right there. So let's hit the little check mark to commit that transformation. And something that you'll notice with my text here is that the letters have a little bit of spacing between them. And the reason that is, let's go ahead and open up the character panel off to the side here. If you don't have that, just go to Window and click Character right there. And I have the spacing right here. If you were to hover over it, it'll say set the tracking for the selected characters. I have that set to a value of 100. If this was set to 0, then the letters would be right next to each other. So just select 100 or something like that, and you are set to go with that. Now, I want to make sure that this is perfectly centered horizontally on the canvas here. So to do that, I'm going to select my Move tool. Let's select the entire canvas by hitting Control or Command A. And then I'm going to hit this second to last icon out of these 6 right here. And so it's this little button right there. Give that a click, and that will center it horizontally on the canvas. And so now let's deselect this by hitting Control D or Command D if you're on a Mac. Now, we've got the text set up, so let's just go ahead and start off and extrude this in 3D space. So let's go to 3D, click 3D extrusion from selected layer, and if you want to, you can switch to the 3D workspace, but I really don't need to, so I'm going to click no. And here we go, we're already starting to see some pretty cool 3D text here. Now, we are going to do a little bit of tweaking with the camera and the text and things of that sort. So, with your current view selected, go to the 3D camera, click perspective, and change the field of view to 14. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I had the goal of creating some depth of field, and in the real world, the smaller the, or sorry, not the smaller, but the shorter the lens, the shallower the depth of field, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how it is in real life. So I changed the field of view to 14 millimeters rather than 35. Now let's go ahead and grab this this tool right here called Slide to the 3D Objects, and let's just kind of slide this on in while holding the Shift key until we're all nice and close. And we're almost there. Voila, looking beautiful. Okay, so next up, let's go ahead and start tweaking the 3D text itself. So let's go to the 2013 extrusion material right here. And for that, what we're going to do is we're going to change the opacity down to, let's say, let's do 30%. Let's put the refraction all the way up. And let's see, we'll put up the reflection a little bit and maybe put up the shine just a touch. But other than that, that's pretty much all you need to do for the extrusion material there. And now let's go ahead and start setting up the ground plane where the font is going to be sitting on. So let's go ahead and grab our, let's see, our grunge texture here. I'm going to use texture 8 from Action Movie Essentials 2, and I'll drag this on in. And then I'll drag this back over and down into our new document here. And so let's go ahead and rename this to Grunge, just so it's nice and easy to identify. And with your 3D menu open, select the 3D postcard option right here and click Create. And no, I don't want to go to the workspace, so I'll just stop that. And so there you go. Now this texture is going to be available in 3D space. However, we need to get this into the same 3D space as our font here. So with the grunge layer selected, hit Control E or Command E if you're on a Mac, and that will go ahead and merge it down into the same scene as our text here. Now I do want to make sure that that this is flat with the ground. So let's go ahead and select the grunge layer right here. And let's try and get the rotation. There we go. So put your cursor right below this blue arrow right here where it says rotate around x-axis and click and drag upwards. And let's just get that pretty close to 90 degrees right here. And so once that's rotated, you can go over to the properties and you can see that under the coordinates there is a 88 degrees symbol underneath this triangle for the x-axis. So what you'll want to do is change that to 90 degrees and hit enter. Hey, I don't want 89.9, I want 90. There. Much better. So now that you've got that set to 90 degrees, what you can do is, again, making sure that you have the grunge layer selected in your 3D panel, go ahead and click this little drop-down arrow right here and click Snap Object to Ground Plane. And so once you do that, that will put it perfectly level with the ground plane, which is pretty convenient for what we're wanting to do here. However, this particular texture is not big enough for what we are trying to accomplish. So put your cursor over this white box and it will say Scale Uniformly. Once you have that hovering right there, just click and drag upwards and that will scale the entire texture. Now, how big you scale this is entirely up to you, but I'm going to make it, let's try 260% for the time being. I'm going to zoom out and see how big it is. Wow, this sucker really got extended here. So what I'm going to do is try and move this back in Z space so that way it's a little further faded out into the horizon, I guess you could say. So again, under your properties menu, go to where it has this little crosshair right here for movement and go to the Z axis and click and drag that to the left so that way as you keep dragging, you'll see this move slowly and slowly. Whoa, what's going on over here? Click that. There we go. So just click and drag that leftwards, and that way it will start going further down into Z space. And so let's just make sure this is right up to the edge right there. Looking pretty good. And let's hit Control H for the time being, just so that way we get rid of all of the extra little 3D options, just to get an idea of what this is all looking like. And to me, it looks like the ground plane is looking like it's in a good position, but I need it to fade out so that way it's just pure black in the surrounding area. So I'm going to hit Control H again to go ahead and bring back all the fancy 3D stuff. And let's open up the grunge layer group and select grunge. And so now your properties panel should be changed just ever so slightly over here on the side. And what you want to do is go to where it says diffuse, and then there's a box, and then there's a little icon next to that box. So give that a click and do edit texture. And just hit OK. It's not really all that important. And so here we go. We've got this texture that we are going to be editing for our 3D scene. Let me close this up. So in order to make this fade to black, what we're going to do is go to Layer, and we'll do a new fill layer, and we'll click Gradients. And this doesn't need a name or anything like that, so just hit OK. And this should be a natural black to transparent gradient. Hit OK. And let's change the style to radial. Let's reverse that so that way it's black on the outside. Whoops. Can I undo that? Let me try and move that back to the center there. That'll have to do. And right here, it's a little experimentation on what you want to do yourself, but I'm going to change my angle to 60 degrees and the scale to about 120. And with that, I'll hit OK. And then once you've got that set up just the way you like, go to File and click Save. And then once that's done saving, go back to your 3D scene, and this should be faded out. There we go. So now you can see a little bit of a fade along the edge, and that's looking pretty fantastic. So now that we've got all of that set up, let's start editing the scene a little bit so that way the text is floating above the ground plane. I'm going to select the 2013 layer here, open up my 3D panel, and let's go ahead and select the 2013 layer. Let's move this up just a little bit. So somewhere right around there is looking pretty good. And then select the current view, and then select the Move tool, which is the center icon right here, and then click and drag downwards while holding Shift until 2013 is just below the top edge right there. So there we go, we're looking pretty good, but now I want to go ahead and change up the lighting in this scene to make it a little bit more dramatic. So select the infinite light down here at the bottom, and then in the properties panel, we're going to change the type from infinite to spot. And then after a moment, that'll update there. And if you haven't messed with this 3D option too much, all I'm going to say is that it's a lot of experimentation with the position of the light and the rotation of it as well. So I'm going to start off by using the move tool to click and drag this upwards, so that way the source of the light is higher up in the sky. And then I'm going to use this fourth icon to slide the object closer to the camera by clicking and dragging downwards, so that way we're getting this little spotlight shining down on everything right here. And so I don't want this to be at an angle. I want it to be directly down. So I'm going to use the first icon right here to click and drag and rotate it a little bit. So let's see if we can get that a little bit more directly downwards. And then let's try and move this back over here. Oh, let's try this again. So let's change that to be more right there. And let's move the lights. There we go. Looking pretty sweet. All right, so now that we've got this basically aimed directly down at the text, I want to widen up the spotlight so that way it covers more of the text there. So with any of those tools selected, you should be able to hover over the edge of the circle over here, and you'll see that it'll change into like this upwards arrow. And so once that icon changes, you can click and drag upwards, and that will widen up the spotlight. So that right there is looking just about right. And if you want to, you can do the same thing for this inner hotspot, which is essentially just like the brightest part of the light there. But you don't have to mess with that if you don't really want to. Okay, so let's hit Control 0, get back in here, hit Control H to start hiding all the fancy crap, and let's see what this is looking like. Alright, so we're off to a pretty good start, but now I want to begin to, what's the word I'm looking for? I want to soften up all of the shadows, and what else do we want to do? Oh, of course, we need to add in the depth of field as well. I almost forgot about that part. That would have been quite a shame. So I will warn you right now, if you decide to add in depth of field, it's going to take a lot longer for this to render for you, because depth of field is just, I don't know, I guess it's just complicated like that. So let's go ahead and start off by softening up the shadows. Let's open up the 3D panel over here. Let's select the spotlight, and we'll change the shadow on that all the way up to 100%. And there we go. Now let's go back to the environment, and we'll change this shadow right here to 100% as well. And so that should do it. Let's see if we go to the scene. Nope, that doesn't have anything. There we go. So that's all you have to do is change the environment shadow to a softness of 100%, as well as the shadow for the spotlight. So once you've got all of that going on, let's go ahead and apply the depth of field. So let's go to the scene, or is it the environment? I'm trying to remember here. Maybe there we go. Go to the current view. That's what I was looking for. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the depth all the way up to the maximum, which is 10. And you're going to see basically everything blur out. And that's because you don't have the correct distance for the depth of field set. You need to determine what's in focus. So all you're going to do is click and drag this upwards until you see the front of the 2013 text come into focus. But it looks to me like I already went past it, so I'm going to go left instead. There we go. So let's get that front in focus. Oh, too much. And right around there is looking just about perfect. So I set that down to 0.15 for the distance. That's going to be different between person to person depending on how far back or forwards you pushed the text. So just kind of play with the distance until you get something that looks just right. And once you've got all that going, let's click the render button next to this trash can in the properties and let this thing render for the next, Well, actually, I guess that depends on what computer you're using. So I'm just going to let this sit here for the next maybe half hour or an hour or so. And then I'll come back, continue the tutorial, and we will go from there. So I will see you in just a second. All right, we are back. This thing's been rendering for the past roughly an hour or so, and it said that I had like another hour to go until it's finished, but it looks good enough, so I just decided to interrupt it so we could keep going here. And let's see, so the spotlight itself looks a little choppy there, so if I had the time, I would go back and kind of tweak the spotlight there, but so far it's looking pretty good, so let's just go ahead and continue and see what we've got going. And so let's see. So the next step is to start adding in some of those little spotlights that you saw in the demo. These little twinkling lights that you see here and there throughout the image. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's add a new layer, and let's just name this. I don't know. Let's name them particles. There we go. That's the name I was looking for. Particles. And what we're doing for this is going to be pretty simple. We'll go to our brush tool by hitting the letter B, and I'm going to set it down to maybe about 12 pixels with a hardness of 0% there. And let's make sure our foreground color is set to white. And then let's open up the brush panel over here on the side by, well, it depends on what you're doing. You can either hit F5 to bring that up, or you can go to Window, Brush to bring that up. And for what you're going to do on this, go to the brush tip shape and set the spacing to the maximum 1000%. And then for shape dynamics, put the size jitter to 100%. And that should be it for the shape dynamics. But on the scattering, you're going to put the scatter on both axes at 1000% and the count jitter at 1000% as well. And so that by itself is just going to vary up the size of the brush as well as how scattered it is going to be. So once you've got those settings set up, all you need to do is just choose where you want these particles to be. For example, maybe I'll have them trail along the side right here, maybe inside the 3 a little bit. Maybe I'll have them a little up there on the side. Let's put them between the 1 and the 0. Maybe have a couple inside the 0. And maybe we'll just kind of trail along the side over here and on the inside, and just kind of put a couple out in the space out on the sides over here. And there we go. That's pretty straightforward. So just click and drag on random places, and you should get a pretty neat little effect here. Now, what you'll want to do next is add a little bit of a glow to the particles. So let's go to Effects. Let's add the outer glow. There we go. And for this, I like to have like a nice light blue kind of a color, and let's just make that just a small little bit of a fade there. Let's see what looks good. So maybe around 30 pixels is looking pretty decent. Just kind of mess with that as you so choose, and we'll hit OK. And so the last thing we're going to do is merge everything into a new layer, so that way we can apply the photo looks and the null light factory. So with the topmost layer selected, in this case it'll be the particles layer, hit Control Alt Shift E or Command Option Shift E, and that will merge everything into a new layer. So we can just call this merged. And let's start off by going to Filter, Magic Bullet, and use Photo Looks. And what you do here is completely up to you, but the effect that I decided to go with is under the music videos section, and just click, oh crap, which one of these was it? It was either Berlin or Blue Bleach, maybe not that one. Maybe it was Hot and Cold. Crap, I really don't remember which one of these it was. I'm pretty sure it was Blue Bleach. Yeah, there we go. So go to Blue Bleach. But since this one's a little bit too intense on the darks, what you'll want to do is go to the curves, and then just kind of bring some of these shades back up, and then bring down some of the whites up there to just kind of mellow out the overall contrasting that's being applied. So that right there is looking pretty decent, and we'll just go and hit OK. And after a few seconds, it'll apply all of that coloring for you. And there we go. So we've got that kind of aquatic looking thing going on here. And just for that final touch, we are going to add that nice lens flare that we saw. So now we'll go back to filter, go to Red Giant Software and No Light Factory. And the flare that you want to use for this is called Clash. So just kind of scroll down. Everything should be alphabetized, and you double click Clash. And then if you click and drag on the image, you can see the position of these 3 different lens flares as you click and drag around. So where you put this is completely up to you, but I decided to put the center flare, well, not really the center flare, but wherever the crosshair is. We'll put that up in the top left, and then we'll just make one of these other flares just kind of match up on the edge of the 2 there, and then everything just kind of falls into place. And from there on, all you do is you mess with the scale. Maybe you'll want to add in the color, so I used a 7CB89 for the color. And then you just mess with the brightness and things of that sort until you get something that looks like what you want to apply. So once you've got that done, all you have to do is hit OK. It'll apply the lens flares for you, and now you can take a look at your work of art. Well guys, that's all there is to this particular effect here. It's a little bit of a journey, you know, trying to get through the 3D portion of it all, and it's a little bit confusing and time consuming, but overall the end effect is pretty sweet and definitely worth the effort. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments section below. And if you could, again, do me that favor by liking the video and leaving comments and things of that sort, that would be fantastic. And of course, feedback is always welcome. So, once again, my name is Brandon Bias, and that's all I have for you guys this week. Enjoy your New Year's, and I will see you next week.